Hello and welcome to UK Crime Book Club. And I'm delighted this evening to be joined by Max Luther. And it's Max's publication day of his first book, a second book even, sorry, of On the Run, which is, I'll let Max tell you all about his series in a second. Thanks for joining us this evening, Max. And would you like to start by telling us about your series?
Sure, yeah. Well, thank you very much for having me. Really appreciate being able to be here and chat to you. Yeah, so the series is it's a crime thriller series, or probably probably better described as an action thriller series, really. And it's centered around a character by the name of Alex Drace, who is a private bodyguard, and in the first book, he is assigned with the task of protecting a witness who has had to go on the run because the witness protection program she was under is compromised. And so, as a favor to an ex-colleague in the police, Drace finds the witness, and the book goes from there, really, for following their journey as he tries to keep her safe as they're hunted across London by the people who don't want the witness, whose name's Sarah Bennett, who don't want her to have the opportunity to give her evidence. And so yeah, so that was the start of the series.
Yeah.
And On the Run, which was published today, is the second book in the series, and it really picks up. It picks up where the first book, Nowhere to Hide, left off, without being a continuation of the same story. It's a new story and a fresh set of characters. But yeah, for the timeline, that's where it picks up. And it's set in America. It's another fast-paced story.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's around. Drace finds himself in the States because he's on assignment over there. He's taken up a job protecting a very wealthy businessman in Los Angeles who has come under threat of kidnap. An associate of his was kidnapped and held to ransom for a large sum of money, and he's worried that the same thing will happen to him. So he's hired protection, and Drace, being a very experienced bodyguard, he applies for the job at the end of the first book, and gets the job, and the book starts from that point where he's there's a bit of a prologue, but ultimately the story starts with Drace protecting his client, and and it goes from there. The chaos ensues from there.
Well, it's quite an exciting prologue, actually, without giving too much away. You know, it's that it really hooks you in the first sort of chapter. You know, finding out about, because I hadn't, as we said before, I hadn't read the first book, so but I was quickly into the story and wanting to know what was going on next. What inspired you to write the series?
Well, I've been a keen reader since I was a teenager, really, and I guess that's where it starts with a lot of writers, is that they love reading. Yeah. And for one reason or another, they have a go at writing and take it from there. For me, it took me a little while to get into reading from when I was a child. My mum tried ever so hard, and I was always a
reluctant reader.
I was, to start with. Yeah, I was always sort of more drawn to action films, and I suppose growing up in the Schwarzenegger and Stallone era of action movies, I was always, as a young lad, I was always more more drawn to that. But it wasn't. It was. I was around books a lot as a child because my father owned and ran an independent bookshop with his two brothers. So I was always around books, and then it wasn't until I won't be able to tell you the year, but it was when Andy McNab published Bravo 20.
Right.
And my dad was having him. He was going to Andy McNab visited the bookshop, or he had plans to visit the bookshop to do a signing. And so my dad was reading Bravo 20 in the run up to meeting him.
Yeah.
And obviously I was, I can't tell you the year. I can't tell you how old I was, but I know I was far too young to read Bravo 20.
I think we've all done that.
Yeah. But my dad, he couldn't guard the book 24/7. So I eventually got my hands on it and read it. And then it was really when Andy McNab started to write. He after he wrote, I think he wrote a couple more non-fiction books, and then he started to write fiction in the action thriller genre, and it was really then that I really got hooked into reading, and I read everything that he wrote, and then that just opened the door for me to the crime fiction genre in total, and that was it from then on. I went from being a reluctant reader to in my mid to late teens just wanted and onward just wanting to read everything I could get my hands on, and so that sort of so from that point on I was a very, very keen reader. And then it was about 10 years ago I was reading The Affair by Lee Child.
Oh, right, yeah.
And I'm a huge Lee Child fan. And for whatever reason, I got to the end of that book and turned the last page, and I just decided that I was going to try and write one of these. I felt like I'd read enough of them. And I loved reading so much that I thought, why not give it a go? And so I did, and fell in love with writing, and it went from there. And I wrote every opportunity I had. I was writing, and it became a really serious hobby for me. And tried over the years to get a few things published. I think I wrote before I signed the deal with Canelo to have Nowhere to Hide published. I think I'd written 3 books before that I couldn't get anywhere with, and then Nowhere to Hide was the one that got picked up by my agent Kate Barker, and that Kit Neville at Canelo, my editor at Canelo, fell in love with and offered me a deal, and now
rest is history.
Now here I am with the second book.
It's really interesting what you were saying about sort of Chris Ryan and sorry, not Chris Ryan, Andy McNab, because I worked in a library, and I would say that that Chris Ryan and Andy McNab were 2 of the most popular, and Lee Child, fiction. I think Lee Child was year on year like the most taken out books. I can
imagine, yeah.
And actually, there's this whole thing about like men reading, and that men don't read as much as women, but actually those books used to just, and especially if there's a new one out, it was, it would just fly out. So I mean, there's definitely something, isn't there, about that genre that men and women want to read.
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of it has to do with the pace.
Yeah.
I think that if I, for one, I'm guilty of having a poor attention span at times, and so I think when a story really ticks along at a fast pace, there's always something happening, and the characters are all are quite often, if not always, in some form of peril, or there's some sort of danger on the horizon. I think that's really appealing to people, and I think getting that balance between pace and you know, a tight, exciting plot line and character, which is something Lee Child does really well.
Yeah,
I think that it's just something that really draws people in.
definitely.
So and also I think the genre that that sort of genre, not just, you know, action thrillers, crime fiction, crime thrillers. I think there's quite often a fitting resolution to the story, which I think again is very appealing. I think people like a happy ending, so to speak. You know, they like things to be tidied up, tidied up, and they want the people who have done bad things in the book to get what they deserve.
Yeah.
And they want the people that they've been rooting for to come out on top. And I think it's very much a tried and tested method of storytelling that people just come back for time and time again. Because life, you know, life can be quite chaotic, can't it? And uncertain and unpredictable. And so I think that's what draws people to fiction, particularly crime fiction.
Absolutely, yeah. It's escapism, isn't it? In a way, you know. And although you can be reading things that are quite dark and quite, it's you know that it's not real, even though it feels like you're in that moment. But you can shut the book, can't you?
Yeah,
you can shut the book and walk away. Whereas, you know, if you're and I think that's the whole thing about reading, isn't it? Is like that you can immerse yourself in another world, and then when you've had enough, you can come out of it and then carry on with whatever you were doing. But
exactly. I think that's why people love the genre so much, and it's why people enjoy action films and horror films, and because they can take that step into a world that they would never, you know, that they never stepped into before, they never have any experience of, and they wouldn't want an experience of in real life. But to step in that imaginary world and have that sort of that safe, dangerous experience is, you know, it's exciting for readers.
I mean, crime fiction is, you know, it's like one of the best, you know, best-selling genres of, you know, so people obviously like it. Like I say, it's tried and tested. It's like the action films. People like the excitement, and it's just, and I think it's interesting, isn't it, that there's so many books that are written in that genre, but people still want more. So there's always I think writers can always have a new take on something. I suppose when you boil a story down to its basics, I suppose that there are probably only a handful of different kinds of stories that can be told, and that, you know, that have been told for thousands of years, but there's always, you can always have a different take on something, because we're all individuals, aren't we? We're all different people. So as another writer steps in and uses their imagination to tell a story, it can always be just different enough to feel like a new thing. So I don't. That's why. I think that's one of the reasons why it doesn't, with the genre, and it doesn't ever seem to feel stagnant. Yeah, no, definitely. I was really, because Alex is a very interesting character, isn't he? How did he come about? I was quite sort of interested in his sort of, because I hadn't read the book. I didn't know because I hadn't read the first book, whether there was more of his backstory, or whether, you know, whether there's where he sort of came from.
Yes, so there is. So his background is explained more in the first book. I mean, it's, well, I'll tell you a bit about him, and I'll sort of try and explain sort of where he came from.
Yeah, sure.
He's so he grew up as an orphan. Both his parents passed away when he was far too young to remember them. So his experiences as a child were all in children's homes, sort of dotted around the UK, and it was really some of the things that he witnessed during that upbringing that instilled in him a desire to want to do something productive with his life. Because I think he saw people around him who were obviously going down a negative path in life, and so he wanted to make sure that didn't happen to him. And there's a bit in the first book which doesn't give anything away, but there's a part. It's not a flashback, but when he's talking to Sarah, to the witness he's protecting, and he's discussing his background, and he tells her a story of when he stops a group of teenagers from the same kids home as him from robbing a young mother at a cash point nearby the children's home in Nottingham, if possible. And Dre steps in as a very at this point. Obviously, he's a young lad, and he's not the man that he's grown to be.
No.
So he's very reluctant initially and frightened to step in and do anything about it. But he does. Something inside of him compels him to. Yeah. He starts to walk away, but something compels him to stop and turn around and go back and help. And he sees the group off, and then the police visit the children's home the following day, and Drace is worried that he's going to be in trouble because he's had a fight with these would-be robbers.
Right. Yeah.
But the police arrest the other lads who tried to rob this young mother, and then they mention to Drace, "Oh, we could use somebody like you in the police." And so that sort of plants a bit of a seed in his mind.
Right.
And he ends up joining the police when he turns 18. He starts off in Greater Manchester, and he's trained to after going through his probationary period, he's trained as a firearms officer, an armed response vehicle officer. He then, because of his character, because of his upbringing, he finds it hard to settle down. So he moves. He ends up transferring to West Midlands Police, and then he goes through what's called a counter-terrorist specialist firearms officers course, and he then later transfers to the Metropolitan Police, where he joins the RASP unit, the Royalty and Specialist Protection Unit, and becomes a bodyguard.
Right, yes, that's where him. Yeah.
He looks after the Home Secretary for a couple of years, and then the Prime Minister, and then he tragically his wife at the time, Lily, who was also a serving police officer, she's murdered. And so he's throughout the events in the first and the second book, he has that grief hanging over him.
Yeah.
And he's so that really sort of encapsulates the character. And the events in the second book, where as he's protecting this this businessman, I'll go back to why he to sort of what inspired him, so to speak, which is a really difficult question to answer, to be honest.
Sorry,
because I don't know how other writers do it, but I tend to either sit with a notebook or sit in front of my computer and the ideas just come to me, and
that's good.
It is good, yeah. It's it really is just a product of my imagination, and it's I mean, I knew I wanted him to. I knew sort of the sort of looking at it at the bigger picture of his character. I knew that I wanted him to be a very capable person.
Yeah,
and I knew that because I knew the kind of situations that I would be putting him through. Because of the genre, I knew that he would have to handle dangerous situations.
Yeah,
but I also wanted I wanted him to have a bit of a vulnerable side, and also ultimately I wanted him to sort of be managing a bit of pain in his life, because I think that's
tortured soul. You have a tortured soul.
Yeah, I think it's sort of. I think a lot of my favorite characters are like that.
I think quite a lot of detectives. Sort of detectives, or they've had things that have gone on, haven't they? I think it does make them more endearing, even though they're in if they've got some sort of pain, they'd be quite boring, wouldn't they, if they were just sort of one-dimensional?
They would, yeah. You've got to give them. Obviously, obviously, I throw challenges at him left, right, and centre in the storyline, but there's got to be something a little bit deeper going on. Something a little bit deeper driving him forward, and and I think it's really sort of the it's sort of going back to sort of the basics of character. It's sort of the old superhero story, I suppose. Not that he is a superhero.
No,
he's far from it. He gets hurt quite a lot, but I think when you look at Batman, for instance, Batman was his parents.
He was orphaned, wasn't he?
And orphaned, and I think the only real difference between the villains and the heroes is that the villains and the heroes, they always experience the same, if not similar, experiences. They all go through. They both go through terrible things. Yeah. But it's the hero who decides to. It's the hero who decides that they're not going to let it happen to anybody else.
Yeah.
And it's the villain who sort of turns back and lashes out at the world because of what's happened to him.
What happened? Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess that's true of what he was saying about when he's in the children's home. I guess he's seen that from an early age, how people decide to move forward with their life, whether they take one direction or the other.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's the case for Drace. I think he was very much at a fork in the road.
Yeah.
At one point in his life when he was young.
Yeah.
And he luckily he made the right decision.
So when you're so are you a plotter or a pantser?
You'll have to explain this in a second. A pantster.
Have you not heard of the pantser? So a pantser is by the seat of your pants. Yeah.
That's the first time I've heard that, but I like it. I'm going to use that. I need to use that in the future.
Yeah. Quite often people are one or the other. It's
I am. I'm going to be really annoying and answer it by saying I'm a little bit of both. I'm probably more the latter. I make a few notes.
Yeah.
Before I start writing a book, but that won't go beyond more than maybe 4 or 5 pages of scribbled A4.
Yeah.
Just a very basic plot outline, really, as to beginning, middle, and end.
Yeah.
How's the story going to start? I like a good starting point, and an exciting an exciting, how can I put it, perilous, you know, it's straight
something
into the
really
action.
Draws you in.
Yeah. And then I'll pretty much go from there. I'll know roughly, I'll sort of carve a bit of a path for myself as to where I'm going from the beginning. And I'll know roughly where I want to end up. But that path, well, so far, anyway, with every book I've written, that path has always changed. Always.
Yeah.
As I've been going along it, I've always decided, no, I'm going to go a different way. This isn't heading in the right direction. And I sort of find my way with that method. In terms of character is very much the key. I don't plan the characters at all. They are
sort of let them do their own thing.
Yeah, they come about. They come about as they come about when I'm writing, I suppose. And I don't really know who they are, and I guess until I've finished the first draft, and then I can go back after the first draft and I know who they are at that point, and then I can refine them and develop them from there. So I'm a little bit of.
So you really sort of start with a plot of such, and then sort of go from there and sort of flesh it out with. Did you always know like the settings? Because obviously your first book was set in the UK, and then the second one was in America. Was that always something that you knew that would be, or was that when you finished the first book that sort of you ended it with the sort of the start of the next book? Really, you were leading into it.
It is, it's very much that. I did. It was something as I finished the first book, I knew roughly how the second book would start, and I knew the setting, and I knew the rough storyline. So in that case, I did make sure that it had that link, so to speak. But I did but when I started writing Nowhere to Hide, the first book, I did always envision it to be a bit of a transatlantic series, because I've grown up reading so much American fiction, and watching so many American movies, and been really inspired by American culture, and so I always thought it'd be really interesting to create a character. It's one of the reasons why I made him a bodyguard, was because I knew I could put him anywhere in the world. You
could travel him around,
I didn't have to restrict him. If he was a DI in a certain police force, or if he had a family in a particular city, that it restricts how I could.
That's really interesting. It
restricts my imagination a little bit as to what I can do with him. So I always knew he would. I always knew I wanted to sort of have the freedom to put him anywhere. And I did always want to have him hopping from the UK to America and back again throughout the series, because I think perhaps the way I write and the stories I tell, I could be wrong, but I think quite well suited to an American audience and American readers.
I think so. I think I think you're right. I think and you want it to be able to be. You want it to be able to be read anywhere, really, don't you? And have that appeal.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. And so I didn't want to restrict him. So really, ultimately, want to be able to put the character anywhere that sort of my imagination deemed fit. So to speak.
Because one thing I was going to ask you was about sort of the research, and I was wondering whether you were going to send him to sort of exotic climes so that you could go there and go on holiday and have a look at it first as part of research, obviously.
That would be tempting. Yeah, that's a good idea. Maybe if well, we'll see how the book sales go in the future, and maybe if I can save up some money.
Maldives or somewhere, because he could have like
Yeah, that would be good. Yeah, I'm sure I could think of something.
Yeah.
And save up some money and head out there for some research.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. In all in the, you know, in all for your art, you know, there's no other reason.
Yeah, no other reason. No.
Yeah. Do you have to, what sort of research do you have to do for, you know, for the books? Have you?
Not a great deal, to be honest.
No.
No, not a great deal. It is all. Well, it's all, well, certainly in terms of the plot and you know, sort of the action scenes.
Yeah.
It really is a product of my imagination, and some of the fight scenes help with the fact that I've trained martial arts for last 20 plus years, so
that's helpful. Yeah,
a lot of the fight scenes come, well, writing the fight scenes comes very naturally to me. I don't have to pause and
no, it's that sort of flows because you know it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It does flow a lot quicker. I can I don't have to, there's no pausing and deciding how would Drace do this. I can that allows me a lot of freedom.
Yeah.
So and in terms of the rest of it, there's so much information available nowadays that it's and having watched more than a healthy amount of action films and having read an awful lot of action thrillers, I've probably picked up a few things or two.
I think you do, and I think, like you said at the beginning about readers being most readers or most writers are readers first, because that's how you get your craft, but also how you know that you want to write something like you've read. And I think they always say, like, write what you know as well, don't they? So I mean, obviously, you know, you might not know about being a bodyguard, but you can bring those experiences from your experience, like watching, you know, whatever, into that.
Yeah. And it is, and I think just having a very, I think all writers must, because you want to have, all storytellers for that matter, have got to have a very active imagination. You know, it's what drives it, and I think that I think that has an awful lot to do with it. I think that I suppose if people wanted, you know, absolute sort of intricate detail, they'd probably go to a documentary rather than fiction. I think fiction has to, just by its very nature, it has to have a healthy, realistic balance between realism and entertainment, because that's ultimately what we're doing. Is people read fiction for entertainment.
And I think with books like yours, which are fast paced, and you know, and you've got a story going on where you don't know which direction it's going to go in, because actually it's quite difficult to talk about this book, because I was really worried that I would get, there's like I'm not going to give anything. I'm not going to say anything because I don't want to spoil it. But there's lots of twists, I think we can say, that are unexpected. And that's sort of, And I really like that in a book where you're, you know, where you think that you know where it's going, and then it goes in a completely different direction. Is that the same when you're writing it? Because it did feel like, whoa, where did that come from? You know, did that sort of happen when you were writing it? Because I think sometimes it can. If you were surprised, then we're surprised.
You know, it did. It is, for me, it is how these things come about, because I mean, I'm sure there are some writers who well, I know there are plenty of writers who, before they type a single letter, they have every chapter planned out and they know every twist, and
that's your plotters.
Absolutely, exactly. But for me, it's I make these decisions as I'm going along, as though almost as though I was the reader as well, and sort of in there amongst it. I think that's why I love writing so much, is because I'm kind of like, yeah, I'm kind of like a reader who makes the decisions in the book. I'm sort of reading along with it, but I get to decide what happens next, and so it does. Like I say, I always have an end goal in mind, a rough end goal, but how I get there is very much up for grabs when I'm writing that first draft, and that includes any twists. It's something that I'll get to that stage and I'll think, well, that could be a nice little spanner in the works to throw in, and I'll chuck it in and see how it feels.
Because some of the characters, I think it's fair to say, aren't very nice in your book either.
No, they're not. No.
Were they quite fun to write?
Quite unpleasant.
I think that's an understatement for some of them.
Sure. Yeah, sure. They were pleasant, might not be the right word, but they were enjoyable to write because I knew what fate would befall them later on in the book. Not that I had that planned out, but I knew that they would get what they deserved in the end.
Yeah.
So to make them as sinister and as careless with other people's well-being as I could was an enjoyable process, because I do like, just as a fan myself, as a reader, I do enjoy a good revenge story. So and I think as a writer, part of that enjoyment is setting that up so that when their fall comes, it's a satisfying one. So,
well, everybody loves the villain, don't they? And I think having characters in a book that are unlikable also, again, sort of wills the reader on to want to reach that, that sort of, like you say, that happy ending. They get what they deserve. Comeuppance, whatever you want to call it.
Sure, yeah.
But
so definitely, it wouldn't be much of a story if everyone was friends at the beginning and then they stayed friends and then they
you wouldn't be like getting many of those off the shelf, would you?
No, shook hands and walked away at the end of the book. It wouldn't.
Thank you very much. Yes.
It wouldn't have the same effect. So
no, because I definitely I sort of felt your book was definitely one that you would see, by the pool, that sort of, that sort of fast-paced, like you said, Lee Child, James Patterson, all those sorts of books that are like you can take on your holiday. You can just really, read it in one sitting and then go and get another drink or whatever. But that's great. It was great that you said that, because that's exactly what I was hoping for. Really, is that I would want it to be the sort of thing that anybody could pick up and read and enjoy, find something. It's not going to be to everyone's taste, but I think the vast majority of people would read it and find something in it that they'd enjoy. Yeah, definitely. I think.
Sorry, go on.
I was going to say no. I think that I think there's lots of bits in it that you can, even if you're not into the sort of fighting but there's other stories within those, isn't there? So that you can go into that, in other bits, and you can find out about Alex, and it's just, there is a lot in it.
Sure, and I think with it being a nice, a fast read, a quick plot and a good, exciting, fast read. I think that is really what I was aiming for. That somebody can pick it up and read it quickly and fly
Enjoy
through
it.
it and enjoy it. That's what it's that's what it's all about, isn't it? It's it's about enjoying it. No one wants to. I certainly don't ever want to pick up a book.
No. I mean, some people do.
Some people do, slog through books and fight their way through it to the end. But that's not for me. I like to.
Oh no, me neither. Life's too short. I gave up that. I gave up that years ago. Like, no, it's Did you what can you say what you're working on now? Is there another book in the series?
Yes. So in fact, I've just put the finishing touches onto the structural edits of the third book. It's called Worth Killing For, and it's I believe it's scheduled to be published on the 15th of August this year.
Oh wow, this year.
Yeah. So it won't be. So if people enjoyed Nowhere to Hide and On the Run, they won't have too long to wait for the third one.
No, that's great.
And that's, without giving too much away, it picks up with Drace back in London, and there's a backstory that has run through the first two books regarding the murder of Lily, of Drace's wife.
Yeah.
And so Drace is in London, and he's there to find the people who killed Lily, and it goes from there, from page one to.
Well, that's going to be quite emotional, and that one.
Yes, I hope so. Yeah, I hope so. I hope I've hit the mark with it.
Yeah.
I've tried to make it. I have tried to put inject a fair amount of emotion in there for him.
Yeah.
But it's obviously very personal for him. This one, the first two books. Well, certainly the first book, Drace only gets involved because he's doing he gets involved as a favor for a friend, really. Yeah. Julie Adler, his old colleague, she needs his help to protect this witness, and so he really only goes through everything he goes through in the first book as a favor to her. And then in the second book, it's a case that because of how events move forward with him protecting this businessman in LA, Drace is made an offer by the team leader to both get out of some tricky legal proceedings, shall we say, and make a little bit of cash while he's still in the States, to go and track down a man's missing daughter. So it's not. So the first two books aren't personal for him. They're just. I mean, he does some pretty incredible things, and takes some huge risks and puts himself in an awful lot of danger. But it's really just because that's the way his moral compass takes him in those two books. Whereas the third book is very, very personal to him and very emotional, and I'll not say too much, but it is very hard not to give anything away.
Yeah, no. I mean, it's really difficult. I mean, we talk about, we do crime books on here all the time, and it is difficult to talk about crime books because ultimately they have a surprise in them at some point that you don't want people to know about. So you have to sort of skirt around but as long as as long as people get a feel of what the book is like, and that it's what type of book it is I think that's part of the interest. And actually a lot of people who watch the videos want to sort of find something to read next, so this sort of helps with that, really. Is there any other genres that you'd like to try and write?
Oh, well, I'd never say never, but there is something about the genre, about this genre that I mean, it's I suppose I've started writing this genre for a reason. It's what I love reading, and it's what I've come to love writing it in. So I've certainly got an awful lot of energy left in me to keep writing these sorts of books. So I would never say never.
No.
But not anytime soon. I shouldn't think. I'm doing. I do. I think there's I just find there's something really exciting about writing these sort of fast-paced thrillers. Where there's always
something.
There's always a challenge. Certainly in every chapter, almost on every page, there's a challenge for the characters. There's some form of danger they're avoiding. There's something I've got to get them. There's something I've got to put them through and then get them out of. And it's I just love it. So this is. Did
you always know when you wrote the first one? Did you know that there was going to be more than one, or did it happen sort of by chance?
Yeah, well, I always wanted to write a series. I always wanted to write a series with the same lead character running through it. Because I find that's what I've been drawn to as a reader an awful lot. I like, I do like to
people like to go back. Yeah,
I do like to come back to a series, and I know who. I mean, obviously, the full cast of characters will change from book to book, but there will always be. If there's always a main character to come back to, you really get to know them, and you almost get to preempt a little bit what how you think they'll handle something, and then they might surprise you with how they actually handle it, and it just makes it a lot of fun to follow their journey from book to book, and then other characters will crop up from time to time in different books, and so I always wanted to write.
To do that,
because for that reason mainly, and
people do. If you only have to look at some of the. I was thinking of like the Michael Connelly, the Bosch series that has gone on for so people do like to go back to what they know, and even I guess it's interesting as well is that there might be characters within the book that develop, and you don't know whether they might even have their own series. They might have a sort of spin-off at some point.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think that does happen. Yeah. It's I think I've heard Lee Child say it, that it's people sort of when people find something they love, when they're looking for the next thing in that series or written by that writer, they want the same but different.
Same but different.
They want the same, and that's to say, that not the same, the same storyline exactly, but they want to feel the same emotions. They want to feel the same edge of their seat.
It's that sort of safety, isn't it, as well? Is that you want to be able to. We talk about on here about your sort of go-to author, and I was going to ask. Obviously, we've talked about that. You've mentioned who some of yours are, and I think it's that sort of safety, isn't it, of being able to go into a bookshop and see a book that you haven't read by them and pick it up and know that you're going to like it.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is. I suppose it's the same. I mean, I hate to call it branding, but it is that sort of that almost that seal of approval before you've even bought it. You see that author's name on a book, and you know what you're going to get, and so you know that it's a safe purchase. You're not going to be disappointed.
No. What do you do you have a favourite book that we've talked about authors and things, but do you have a favourite book from from maybe childhood or one that you sort of go back to? Or
wow, that's a good question. Well, can I mention more than one? Because I struggle to narrow it down.
You can mention as many as you like.
I think I think that The Day of the Jackal by Frederick Forsyth is one
Yeah.
that stuck with me for many years.
Yeah.
Just I think because it was, I mean, it was long before my time when it was first published, but it was a really groundbreaking book, a really and story, and the way it was, not just the story itself, but the way it was told. It really changed the genre, so to speak. So that is a book I've read quite a few times.
You read it over and over.
Yeah, I've read it over and over. It's really enjoyable read, and something of a an educational read for a thriller writer. It's
I think you need one of those, don't you, as a writer? Is they say you should pick a book that's like almost like your sort of your textbook of what you want to write like, or the bits in there that you want to write like.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think, and Greg Hurwitz is another writer who I've been drawn to. His Orphan X series, again, that's a series that when I read the first book in the series titled Orphan X, it was something that really grabbed me. I sort of read it, and as I was going through it, I was thinking, wow, this is exactly the kind of book I like to read. And Greg Hurwitz is another writer that I really admire. And I'm a big fan of Stephen King, which obviously I know.
Yeah, me too.
It's not we don't write in the same genre, but he's such a fantastic storyteller.
Yeah,
I think I've read everything he's written. And
I read him when I shouldn't have been reading him.
Yeah, me too. Yeah,
I was way too young.
Yeah.
Him and James Herbert. I still have nightmares about rats now after reading that when I was about 13.
Yeah, me too. I think I've still got a copy on my bookshelf from when I was a kid. Just the way Stephen King tells a story, the way he writes is something I can just could read him constantly. I think it's a book called Duma Key that he wrote.
Yeah,
which that was one in particular that stuck with me just because of how it just the book just seemed to come to life as I was reading it, and the characters and everything, that the paintings that were coming alive, and he's got
a just amazing, just like visual writing style that you can just you're there. Even if you don't want to be. And I was thinking about like Misery and some of the early ones, just like so graphic that and terrifying.
Really, very much so. And I think the books he's written is like the Billy Summers.
I haven't read those. That's the newer ones, isn't it?
Really good. It's not. It's he's sort of he stepped out of a little bit of what he what he normally does. It is more like a thriller story than what Stephen King's known for. But
for like his sort of more traditional horror sort of.
But great book.
We're coming up to the end now because it was nearly an hour, amazingly.
Wow, it's gone quick.
Yeah, it's gone really quickly. Just before you go, is there anything that you've read lately, sort of, that you've read that you would recommend that you've read, sort of that's out now, or even not if it's not out now? But
well, I've recently read a couple of books by Graham Bartlett.
He's part of the group.
Is he? I'm doing an event with Graham in April, and and so I've been reading Graham's first introduced to Graham's writing sort of the back end of last year, and I've read the first two books in his series, and they great. If you want I think Graham does a really good job of balancing real precision police procedure
procedural, yeah,
with a really great storyline and great characters. He's got that blend of realistic procedural police work and exciting fiction, entertainment fiction. He's got that blend down to a T. So I've really enjoyed Graham's books.
So where is your event with him? Where are you doing that?
That will be at Waterstones in Wimbledon on the 17th of April.
Great. Okay.
Yeah, the two of us there. Yeah, to chat to people and have a talk and answer questions and sign some books. And, so we're looking forward to it. Yeah.
Are you doing any other sort of festivals or events this year?
I'm hoping to make it to Harrogate.
Yeah.
It's the Crime Writing Festival at Harrogate.
Yeah.
It'll just depend on other commitments, but I'm hoping to be there for the weekend, for the Saturday and Sunday.
Right.
Yeah, and that's it so far.
Yeah. So do you write full time? Are you, or do you do other stuff?
No, I don't write full time. No, it's it's a part-time
job.
It's a part-time job. Yeah. That way,
yeah. That's quite impressive. That's quite a lot. To have 2 books out in a year and be working as well is quite a thing.
Thanks. Yeah, it's a lot of work, but I enjoy it, and
that's good.
And it's something that I think because it's so hard to get a new series off the ground, to get it to get readers interested, and so I wanted to put the hard work in early, and and get these 3 books out in in fairly quick succession,
quickly, so that people get to know to know him.
That's it. Get to know the character, get to know the kind of books I write. And then they'll should have come August. Readers will have 3 to go at.
Yeah, brilliant.
And then I'll probably perhaps take my time with the 4th one.
So I'm just going to do this now. So On the Run is out today, and it's available in paperback, and it's published by Canelo. Thank you so much for joining us this evening, Max. It's been really interesting chatting to you, and can't wait to read. But I can read book 1 and book 3 now because I read book 2 first. So I'm really looking forward to finding out what happens to Alex next and before. So good luck, great. And hope to see you again soon.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you very much, Karen, for having me. I've really enjoyed speaking to you. It's been lovely.
No, good. Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Thanks everybody for joining us, and see you again soon.